Let's call to order. Corey, can we do roll call?
Sure. Oh, here comes Emily.
Oh, good.
Yay.
I was going to say, I want to give her 1 more minute.
Right. Joyce Gifford.
Present.
Erin McClellan.
Present.
Tim Leonhardt.
Present.
Melissa Dio.
Here.
And Emily Lisborg.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
All right. And then Ken and Tim are, of course, not here. Let's see, do we have any public comments for tonight?
We do not.
All right, we can move forward to approval of the minutes. Somebody want to make a motion?
Oh.
Make a motion to.
All right, I heard from Emily a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, and Corey, can we get a roll call on the approval of minutes?
Sure. Joyce Gifford.
Yes.
Erin McClellan.
Yes.
Tim Leonhardt.
Yes.
Melissa Dio.
Yes.
And Emily Lisborg.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, we can get into general business. First order on the docket is Payson Farms HOA Park Property Proposal. Please go ahead.
I'll give you a little update, and then I don't know, I think we've got some of the members of the HOA here if they're going to want to speak or not, but
Okay.
just kind of re-summarize the issue and then give you some staff information that we've put together for you on this request from the homeowners association since the last time we met. So just to refresh you, the Payson Farms Homeowners Association has an HOA-owned park. It's 1.7-ish acres, 1.73, I think. And they manage and maintain and own this park. It's longstanding, and they have requested that the city consider taking on ownership and management of that site. And so we presented this to you briefly at the last time you met, and we told you that we'd come back with some follow-up information to help you consider this. And I think what we'd be looking for at some point is for the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee to make a recommendation potentially to either look to move forward on this request, which would work its way to the City Commission, or to not support the request, whichever you're inclined. And certainly you can take as many opportunities to review this as you might need. Again, the property is, we showed you on a map at the last meeting. It's on the south end of the city, off of Central Point. There's just almost to the southern border on Central Point, White Lane, and then kind of back in to that area is where their homeowners association is. We did some analysis of what the maintenance impact would be to the city. We've submitted with your staff report, or with your agenda, we put a staff report in that kind of gives you a breakdown of that. But I'll just give you a summary of what that tells you is that essentially what our estimate is based on the current conditions of the park and based on current dollars in 2025, we think that a kind of a basic maintenance plan with that would be about $9,300 annually. That's just your typical kind of maintenance that we do on our parks. We've also done an estimate with a breakdown of potential deferred maintenance costs that we might need to, if we were to take on this property, that we might incur. And those, include things like I think, a playground replacement at some point is about $25,000. Some picnic table replacements at a total of $6,000, and irrigation system replacement up to $15,000. So, we're looking at a potential deferred maintenance of about $46,000, and the timing of that would have to be determined. These are just kind of a quick analysis of that. So some other information that I think is pertinent to your consideration of this request is our recently adopted park master plan, the one that we just adopted this summer. Guides us on where we need parks, where we have existing parks, how much and what type of parkland we need. So the size of this park at 1.7 acres is considered, is designated as a pocket park. That's our smallest park. Those are usually, typically they're less than 3 acres, and in this case, It's, you know, about half of what a starting point would be for a neighborhood park, which is 3 acres. 3 to 8 acres is a neighborhood park. So this is defined as a pocket park by our standards. And what our parks master plan does is it analyzes the type of park that we have and how many acres, and then we have an established service level. So with this type of park, we are exceeding the amount of pocket park facilities that we would need per that analysis. So we are not in need of additional pocket parks. So then the question is, with that classification, you know, the next classification up would be a neighborhood park, which again, the minimum size typically is going to be 3 acres, and that's going to be up to about 8 acres. And so we would then look at with what guides us to say, do we need more of that type of parkland, even though this would be substandard to a neighborhood park. And the analysis tells us that we do need a future neighborhood park in this kind of general vicinity. It's overlaid and it's, you know, it's a fairly good-sized area. So it does fall within that area, but the question really would be, do we have enough adjacent property, or is there some way to put together enough to have the minimum standard of a neighborhood park? And I don't believe that we have that situation. It's a developed, built neighborhood. And there really doesn't, I don't, in my opinion, it doesn't appear to me that there would be an opportunity to expand that site to make it that minimum standard site that we would need for a neighborhood park. So yes, we need more parkland in this area. You know, does this potentially contribute to that? What we wouldn't want to do is break up our neighborhood park need and say, well, we've got an acre and 1.7 acres here, but then, you know, on the other side of Central Point or in, you know, a couple blocks away or something like that, we could parse together another 1.5 acres to hit that 3 acre minimum. We don't really want to do that. That doesn't really meet the definition and the need of a neighborhood park. So I think it doesn't help us in that regard. That doesn't mean that this park isn't serving a purpose. It is. It's, you know, anecdotally, just my own observation and feedback, I've been by there. It's a well-maintained parcel. The neighborhood, the HOA does a really nice job with this. It's, as far as HOA parks go, this one is nice. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they're maintained less well than this one is. And this one does serve that purpose, and it seems to be pretty well utilized. It's a nice little amenity for that particular area. I think part of the HOA's concern is that its impact is beyond their HOA. So they have a smaller, you know, neighborhood HOA with kind of a limited scope, and it probably does get used by people that live outside the HOA. And I think that's part of the concern from the HOA bringing that to us. But so that's kind of our breakdown. The last piece I would say for consideration is that there are a number of these throughout the city, HOA owned and maintained parks, varying sizes and amenities and different conditions. Again, this is probably at the top of the list of nicer of those types of facilities, at least in, you know, my estimation. What we would have to think about is if the city were to accept this one and take on the ownership and maintenance, I suspect that the other HOAs might come to the city and say, well, then please take ours as well. In fact, we have been approached over the years. I can go back to my first tenure with the city a number of years ago. At least 2 that I can recall, maybe 2 or 3 of the existing HOA-owned parks did come to the city. They came to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee and requested the consideration. And I think at that time there was a review process and the city said, no, thanks. I understand maybe more recently within the last year or so, another of those HOAs came to the city and kind of made the same request. So it's important, I think, for us to understand that if we were to accept one of these, that would likely be, others might come to us with the same request. And, you know, whether we would be prepared for that impact or not is to be determined. So that's a quick synopsis of where we're at. Again, you've got representatives from the HOA here to speak for themselves. They submitted a letter previously that was brought to you before. It's back in your packet again. So if you want to refer back to that, But you may wish to hear from the neighbors of the park that are asking for us to think about that. And then we'll be happy to help you with the discussion or answer additional questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Scott. That was a great breakdown of what we were asking from our last meeting when we visited this. I've stopped by this property twice now just to kind of get a vision of it, see the neighborhood impact there, and it is well maintained and it's very well used. I think the two questions that I have, the first one I want to bring up is, do you know most recently, isn't there a park that was just recently redone or created within that area? Like, I forget what it's called, maybe Hazel Crest or Hazel Grove?
Hazel Grove.
Do you know when that was refinished recently?
It opened within the last few years. I don't know if, Tom, do you know when Hazel Grove opened? It wasn't that terribly long ago. We'll have to.
No, it was just after COVID, I think.
So within the last probably 3 or 4 years.
4 years.
Perhaps
Yeah.
even a little
And
sooner.
that was a 10-year process to get that done.
Right, yeah.
Oh, wow. I was even there for that. And that was kind of my first thought was when I was there, I was like, oh, this is right by the other park that was just completed nearby. For the staff that Parks and Rec has right now, do you feel just the employees you have maintaining and everything, do we have that manpower? I'm concerned with one of the big parts of the Parks Master Plan we continue to talk about is getting more parks in underrepresented areas, making sure that we're kind of filling the needs that are on that. And I'm just worried we're going to spread our staffing a little bit too thin by accepting this or future ones that could come in.
Well, definitely there would be an impact. The financial impact is one thing, but anything that we add is going to cause our resources to be spread more thinly. Now, we did just go through our budget process, the budget that started on July 1, and the parks maintenance budget did take some impacts. We lost all of our seasonal staffing, which has a fairly significant impact to our ability to maintain things in the summer. So that just spreads our time more thinly. And so, yes, it would be an impact. We also have future needs that we're looking at, and we're going to have to figure out how to line up those future park needs as we bring new things online with our ability to maintain them. So one of two things happens. You either find a way to add resources and maintain them at the same level, or you basically stretch your resources further, which then lowers your levels of service. So, in this case, as of today, we don't have there's not additional resources, so it would draw from within our existing resources in terms of staffing and budget to do that. So that would basically just kind of come from the existing and spread everything else a little bit then. This is not a huge park. It's not a gigantic impact. I don't want to overstate that, but everything that we take on is going to add to that impact.
Open for discussion. Tom, do you have something?
I was able to find the opening date. It was May 27th of 2022.
Okay. Seems right. All right, open for discussion. If any other PRAC members have questions, motions, things they want to go through, go ahead, Joyce.
My biggest thing, and Scott brought this up, is opening the Pandora's box of accepting one park, and this park is not really in areas where it's needed, and so others could come with the same reasoning. And with the staffing levels and the funding levels we have at this time, I think it's stretching us too thin to spread that further.
Thank you, Joyce. Melissa, Emily, if you have anything, just raise your hand and I can call on you. All right, so the next option we would have, we can table this until we have other members here, or we can move forward to a motion if somebody has a motion they want to take. Or,
Is there a way to allow if HOA members would like to speak?
oh, of course. Yeah, this is an open discussion if anyone would want to come up and make public comment on this.
You would need to approach the microphone, so we have you on record, please.
Probably should.
What would you like to hear?
Yeah, you need to go up to those, and then you can fill out the form when you get done, because that's the process. Just go up there where the mic is.
Okay. Tell me what to do.
I just know meeting procedure, that's all. You
Okay,
can fill that out when you're done.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you, Denise.
First of all, can I answer questions from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think my first question, we spoke about
Need to
this.
have her give her name
Oh.
and her city of residence for the record, I'm
You
sorry.
keep us going, okay. My name is Pat Ullman. I'm actually not on the board right now, although I was president for 16, 17 years and well acquainted with the whole situation, what we have. I personally, as have Al and Ginger who are here, we are original to the neighborhood. So we have lived here, in my case, 23 years. And I feel like we've done a really good job keeping this park up and well-maintained. And somehow the word came around a few months ago that the city was looking for more park in our area. And so we would love to offer to the city. We understood that it had been offered originally, but turned down because we didn't have restrooms. We still don't have restrooms. We do have picnic tables, we do have a play structure for, I don't know whether you have all seen it or not, but we get a lot of people, we get neighboring subdivisions do enjoy it. They enjoy our neighborhood because it's a good place to walk, to play, to exercise their dogs. We have kind of a hill on one end, and I was watching a mother today with her little girl up at the top of the hill, whether she was gonna roll down the hill. We get sledding in the winter when we have snow. We've had people that have made a slip and slide on the 4th of July. And anyway, the park has been used a lot. We keep up our picnic tables. They're in good shape. And we have made sure that the play structure is safe. And we put fresh bark out every 2 years with the special kind of bark with no slivers. So I feel like we've done a really good job. I don't know what other parks look like with other HOAs, but I can definitely, if the city's interested, this is a pearl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Would you be okay with answering a few questions?
Certainly.
Thank you. I think the first question I would have is if we don't make the recommendation for the city to overtake it, what would the next steps be? Would the HOA continue to maintain it, or what do you think would happen?
Obviously. Yeah. Actually, if we want to get into the technicality of it, the park itself is averaged with the homes in the neighborhood. So we might be technically R6 without that park. But with the park, we're averaged in, so we're zoned at an R8 neighborhood. And as far as I'm concerned, we have had, there has never been a time that this park has not been maintained. And we are after our homeowners to the level that they are asked to maintain their property is commensurate with the park maintenance.
Perfect. And that is exquisite. I have been by the park a few times now, so I wanted to make sure to do some research before.
And we have a sweet-looking neighborhood. Really, I mean, the homes and everything are maintained beautifully.
All right. While Pat is here, are there any other questions for Pat?
All right,
All right. Thank you, Pat.
thank you.
All right, so we have options we can go through now. We can make a motion to recommend or not to recommend the Payson Farms Park property to become part of the city. We can also table this to a future month while we have other members here, now that we've revisited it twice. Would anyone like to make a motion on this?
I have a point of a question. Unfortunately, I missed our June meeting when this first was brought up. With the members from PRAC that are not in attendance, did they share any particular specific feelings about this, or would we be doing a disservice if we did a vote today without them here?
They shared a little bit. There is more of a conversation in regards to getting more information on what the overall cost would be to the Parks and Rec Department, giving the Parks and Rec Department more time to just kind of survey, their opinion on everything that would be there, and then we're just going to revisit it once we have the data that Scott presented today. There were no strong opinions in regards to it. It was just more information gathering on that point.
Thank you.
So we didn't receive any written information from the PRAC members that are missing tonight?
No.
They didn't submit anything online? Okay. I think that we need to wait till we have more of us here to have a robust discussion.
All right, then we can make a motion to table this for our next meeting when we have more of a quorum here to decide this property.
I will so move.
Second?
Second.
All right, Corey, can we get a roll call to motion this for our next meeting when we can make more of a quorum on this decision?
Sure, Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
Erin McClellan,
Yes.
Tim Leonhardt,
Yes.
Emily Lisborg,
Yes.
and Melissa Dio.
Yes.
Thank you all.
We will, move this to our next meeting. And I wanted to thank Pat and the entire committee for coming out tonight, and I appreciate you spending the time there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Oh,
The next meeting is going to be
October 23rd.
Same time, same place.
Correct.
You're there.
Same place, and we'll continue, I'm sorry, I'm sick. We will continue to communicate via email to make sure you have the agenda and everything.
awesome. All right, well, let's get on to our next point of general business, the exciting draft parks. We get to draft the Parks Capital Improvement Plan. Scott, Tom?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Tom, but just while Tom gets ready to bring up our presentation, just a little bit of kind of backgrounding here for you. This is basically the first cut at a look ahead for the next 5 or 6 years of those items. So a capital improvement plan, or CIP, is those bigger infrastructure items, things that we want to build, acquire, et cetera. And where this is coming from is from multiple things. One is our Parks Master Plan that we just completed kind of tells us that these are the things that the community and the technical components of the plan said these are what we need to be thinking about and looking at. This is also related to our city commission goals in the current biennium. So, commission has very clearly said we want to, begin looking at our parks needs, figuring out how we're going to fund those items that the community is telling us that they need or want. So this very much attaches also to our city commission's objective of let's look at planning for the future. So this is very much looking ahead for the next few years. So, we've got some big items out there on the horizon. This doesn't include everything, but these are kind of the things that we're thinking can be tangible and potentially fundable in these next few years. We've got bigger things on the horizon, looking at, potential future aquatic and recreation facility and some things of that nature. But so Tom is going to walk you through this, and what we want to do tonight is present this to you. This is probably going to be a conversation over more than just this meeting tonight. You can help us kind of guide how much conversation you want to have around this, but this is very much right in the wheelhouse of what the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee exists for, is to help give us the input to guide these decision-making processes of what we're going to be looking at as we unroll. We only have so much funding, and we've got to figure out the prioritization of that. So this really gets into prioritizing, but we very much want your feedback, and we want you to tell us if we're hitting the target, or if you think there are other things that we need to be thinking about and moving things around. And the other piece of this I want to mention is we're going to be talking about both existing funding sources and the potential for looking at new funding sources. So that'll be part of this discussion as well. And that's kind of the start of, I think, some of those bigger conversations. So I'm going to let Tom Kissinger walk you through this information, and then we'll answer your questions.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so Tom Kissinger, Parks and Recreation Deputy Director, here today to talk about this draft capital improvement plan. We've talked about this for about a year now. We started to introduce this with PRAC about in the fall of last year. It's very common that you see this in kind of the utility sphere with public works. We have capital improvement plans throughout the city for a variety of different programs, but this really would be the first time that we've done this with Parks and Rec. And as Scott mentioned, it really plays into, we now have this approved master plan. It has a long list of items on it that the community desires. How do we prioritize that for the future and put it into manageable chunks that staff can deliver? So that's what we're going to look at today and talk about some of those funding sources. First, we're just going to talk about what is a capital improvement plan. And it has a couple goals. One of it, the main function is it's a way to plan and communicate with the public. So this is something that, we're doing on a regular basis. We're updating this annually at least. We're having these conversations. We're inviting people to participate, to provide their input, to help us decide what the priorities are. And then from a staff perspective, it also helps us plan resource needs for the short and medium term. We handed out a handout, and I know some of the people online don't have it, but maybe we can put it up at the end so we can go through them line by line. But part of what you'll see on here is we've identified specific grant opportunities as well. And why that's important is grant funding typically has kind of the constraint that you can only have it for one project at a time. So we want to make sure that we're not targeting two projects that are both going for local government grants at the same time. There are some exceptions to that rule, but that's generally the case with a lot of the grant programs that we target for park funding. So this helps us plan out and strategize. When are we going to apply for that funding? When are we going to receive that funding? When can we actually construct the project? It ties into our overall funding strategy. It identifies projects based on their ability to be grant funded. What is the match component that we can put to that? And then what's that kind of unfunded component? And typically that's going to be your kind of like deferred maintenance projects. There are grant opportunities that will pay for replacements and things like that, but a lot of the deferred maintenance is typically not eligible for larger capital grant funding. And then it's an opportunity for community engagement and input, which is kind of what we're starting here tonight. So you'll see a variety of different sources of funds throughout this plan as we start to talk about it. And this is just kind of level setting. What are these funds? How do they operate? So park system development charges, everybody should be pretty familiar with those since we just spent the better part of a year working on updating them. The key constraints to that is that a project must be on the SDC project list. So as we worked through that SDC update, part of that was updating the project list. And then it also must be used for growth-related projects, so new and bigger. So there is a bit of a component that can play into deferred maintenance, and that's typically like if we're replacing a playground with something new and bigger, the component that is new and bigger can be funded by SDCs, the existing cannot. So that's kind of the constraint with SDCs. Metro local share. So as part of the 2019 Metro Parks and Nature Bond allocation, every parks jurisdiction within the greater metro region was allocated money based on kind of their size and park need. We have approximately 1.9 million for Oregon City projects. We have not spent any of that money to date. Hold on one sec. As we've discussed previously, Wesleyland Dog Park is probably our first Metro local share project. And then there's a variety of other ones that we'll talk about throughout this list that would meet the bond criteria, which is a major component of that funding. Since it is targeted toward parks and nature, it has very specific criteria for the bond, any project would have to meet that. An example of a project that wouldn't, just based on conversations with Metro, a playground replacement that is a replacement for like typical post and platform, you know, kind of your structures that you see, that's not eligible for this bond funding. They did not allow for that type of playground. If we replaced a traditional post and platform playground with nature play is acceptable. So some of these kind of unique situations that we have to work through with projects that are eligible for this. And
Good question
Yeah,
on
go
that
for
one. When you say the 1.9 million for Oregon City projects, that's 1.9 million that only the Parks Department has access to, or is that across other departments within the city?
So theoretically, it's only for parks. There could be a situation like in the city, sometimes trails are, you know, kind of jointly done, Parks and Public Works. A trail would be a project that could be kind of shared resource and would be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
But generally speaking, just parks. And the last constraint on this that really does kind of elevate this in the CIP is that it should be spent or under contract with Metro by 2029. So we're working with Metro right now we've started our application for the Wesleyland Dog Park. We're going to be shortly starting our next application for a project that you'll see on the list tonight. And really trying to get some of these projects under contract so that we can get them done within the time frame. As Scott mentioned, tonight we're going to start discussing a new type of funding, and this may be a source of funding that we pursue. We might end up doing something else. Tonight's kind of the unveiling of a parks utility fee as an idea. This is very common in a variety of cities. West Lynn is probably kind of like the inventor of this in many ways. It's a potential new funding source. It operates very similar to other utility fees like stormwater. Pavement maintenance utility fee in the city is an example of another type of utility fee, what we call the PMUF. It helps reduce our dependency on general fund while also funding deferred maintenance projects. So as we start to do the analysis for this, what we're looking to do is, you know, Parks is competing for general fund with other departments. How can we reduce that competition, take care of our operations, while also going above and beyond and taking care of that deferred maintenance component that we know is difficult to fund through these other opportunities and grants. This is obviously something that is going to require more analysis and input. What you see tonight is just a draft example of some projects that could be funded by something like this. And then we get in.
Sorry, another quick
Yeah.
question about that.
No, go for it.
Just understanding, if we were to go down that direction, who ultimately approves or has the say on whether we are adding a park utility fee? Is that a city council decision? Is that something that needs to be voted on publicly? How does that get added? Say we go through all the analysis and we're like, yep, this is the thing we want to do.
Yeah, typically a utility fee like this would be a direct city commission decision and not a vote. But again, there are other types of funding, depends on how we move forward.
Right,
And,
just curious,
Yeah.
thank you.
and then we move into kind of the more traditional, if you will, capital funding sources, which are grants and donations. There are several funding sources available. Metro offers their Nature and Neighborhoods Capital Program. There's the Community Choice Grants Program, which is out there right now in our community. At the state and federal level, there's the Local Government Grant Program. There's the Land and Water Conservation Fund. A variety of different large dollar funding sources are available for grants. And typically what we do is we use this match to supplement all the funding sources that you see above. So particularly at the state level, when you're talking about like a local government grant or a land and water grant, their requirement is typically 50-50 match. So when you look at the project list, you'll typically see the same dollar amount on either side. So we're basically doubling our money when we go for those grants. It's not always like for like, depending on what they'll fund, but that's just generally speaking. And then the last potential funding source is always general fund. It's typically focused on our general maintenance and operations, not large capital projects. And new projects should be planned appropriately so that they're not adding to the overall maintenance burden and creating more pressure on the general fund as we do these projects.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back, Aaron, your question about the parks utility fee. reminded me, one other thing I want to mention, just starting, again, just having very preliminary discussions about this and starting to think about that, but one of the advantages of a utility fee is, yes, it can be, that can be enacted by the governing body, doesn't have to go to a vote of the people. In this case, that's our city commission. We do have other examples of that already in the city. One of the main advantages of this in regard to a utility fee versus, say, an operating levy that does have to go to a vote and would be a tax increment situation, a utility fee captures basically every utility customer that's hooked up, including those entities that are exempt from paying taxes. So as the county seat, we have a lot of governmental exempt property in the city that does not contribute to the operations of our systems. We also have, there's churches and nonprofits and so forth that don't pay taxes, and there's a pretty good amount of that doesn't get captured. So a utility fee gives us the opportunity to apply that to those customers and users that theoretically use all of our systems, including parks, but don't contribute to that through the property taxing thing. So I wanted to mention that as well, that's one of the positive things about a utility fee versus, say, going after something that would be a new tax of some sort.
Thank you, Scott.
Sweet, thank you. Any other questions on sources of funding before we move on?
I had one that was in here, and I remember there being a large presentation in regards to Clackamette Park and the boat ramp and the funds we have there. Can you remind me, do those funds expire at any point, or do those just continue to add until we use them?
So the funds you're referring to there are the West Good Neighbor funds.
Thank you.
Yep, it's, from an accounting standpoint, it's basically like general fund on this list.
Yeah.
But it is kind of dedicated towards parks in general, and it's specifically dedicated to that area, John Storm, Clackamette Cove.
Right.
So that is a funding source that we would target for specifically Clackamette Park. So when you see that, you see like SDCs, that's also in conjunction with West Good Neighbor. And then that actually reminds me of some other funding sources available for that specific project. That would be your Oregon State Marine Board Boating Facilities Grant. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife has the Sport Fish Restoration Funds.
Yeah.
Those are also funds that are kind of waiting for us at the state.
Do the Good Neighbor funds expire, or do they roll forward as we,
Currently, the Good Neighbor funds roll forward based on an agreement with Wes that we're going to use, that we're kind of banking them for this Clackamette project. But they do technically have an expiration date.
I thought there was a kind of a conversation on that. So when I was like looking at this, I was like, oh, all this Clackamette stuff's 4 or 5 years down the road. I just don't want to, I'm sure you guys are on that as well, but I just wanted to ask about that while we're going through the funding sources.
Yeah, and to kind of point to that, we are planning in our current budget, we have the design and engineering portion of Clackamette, so really kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of building the park, creating construction documents for it. That work will be paid for using that West Good Neighbor funds. So we're actually going to start spending that down, so Wes will start to see progress in using those funds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question on the Metro local share.
Yeah.
It looks like the time period, so 2019 to 2029, is that the Metro, that share to Oregon City, that's just something, is that an automated thing, like based on like population, or how exactly was that allocated? That 1.9 million?
That's a good question. I'm actually not too familiar with how it was allocated. I believe it's population size and parkland.
Yeah, there's a formula that goes back to the 2019 is when the bond measure occurred, or that was the implementation of a bond measure that was passed region-wide for Metro. They worked with all the local parks jurisdictions to develop their formula, which I think mostly is population. And I think there are some other factors. We'd have to go back and look at that, but there's a very specific formula. So it's kind of predetermined, if you will. It's pre-calculated, and that amount, there's a big bucket, and that just gets distributed out to all of the participants in the Metro region.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I guess I'm just wondering, like, so it's a bond, so it's something that was voted on. Is is that something that historically Oregon City has received, from like 2009 to 2019? Was there also an allocation from that metro local share?
I think there was a prior bond, yeah, I believe there was a prior, I know Metro has had other nature and, parks and nature bonds. My recollection, it's a little fuzzy at this point, is that there was something close to what we're talking about as the local share program now, that there was some funding distributed. This is much more robust than it has been in the past, for sure. The local jurisdictions did a good job of advocating to Metro that, hey, we'll join you and support this effort, but we want to have some more local benefit than has happened in past bond measures. It was a little bit of a lighter touch, I think, in the past than on this one. This is very specifically like, here are your funds per the formula. We have some parameters, but you have local share or local control over using these funds, and it's a better way to do that, we think. So.
Okay, yeah, that seems like a generous amount. So that 1.9 million, that was the original allocation. Has any of that been spent, or is that what's left?
That has not been spent. So that's the original allocation. The first project that would start to spend that money would be the Wesley Lynn Dog Park. And then there are a couple projects that we'll point out in this presentation that are potential projects for the Metro local share.
Thank you so much.
So if the chair would like, I could give a little more background on that, where that money went from the previous bonds, right?
Yes, if you'd like to approach.
Sure.
Then, of course, please state your name and city of origin.
I know the drill.
Thank you.
Catch me once.
Yeah, well, you should have a cheat sheet. We'll make sure you get one. Anyway, hi, Denise McGriff, City of Oregon City Mayor, and I can add some comments to your question, Emily. So in the past, there wasn't really a pass-through to the local governments. What happened with that money in the previous bonds, we got Newell Creek Canyon Park, and they purchased property to do the Kenema Park, that's basically the open space that's on the other side of the bluff, Kenema Bluff, so they
Yeah.
bought that property. So that's where some of the money went
interesting.
in our area. I don't know if
I
you
wondered how
probably
this
weren't tracking that because you were probably gone by then, but that's where some of that money went. But then after those two things happened, that's when the local governments came, as Scott said, to basically ask for a little bit of that money and how it would be spent in the region, having requirements, of course, but allowing the city to use it if we had a master plan and things of that sort, so we could identify specific projects. So that's the past, I'll say, before Scott, so happened while he was on his other journey, rather than being here, so when he was Community Services Director. So that's where some of the Metro bond money in our area went to. And of course, we all love Newell Creek Canyon Park, which is great. And now that the Kenema Bluffs has been preserved, it's not gonna be developed. It goes all the way down to 99E, where for those of you who've been here a while, the old motel that used to be there, that got torn down, and so all of that's just open space. So that's a little backstory.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for providing that.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions on funding before we move on to the project list? Okay. So as we get into the project list, these projects that you'll start to see are actually budgeted for in our current biennium. The one caveat to that is the one that has the asterisk there, which is Singer Creek Annex, which we'll talk about a little bit more. That is not budgeted for, but could be a kind of easy win with the Metro Local Share project opportunity. So the two that are currently budgeted for this fiscal year are a Rivercrest ADA pathway. So if you think about Rivercrest over by where the play structure is, there's an ADA parking spot there, but there is no actual ADA pathway to get into the park. So we did plan out a small amount of SDC funding to support this kind of pathway into the play structure, which is ADA accessible. There's also potentially, depending on cost, we might be able to add an accessible play element to the playground as well, and just improve the accessibility of that play structure overall. The other one that we've talked about previously is Wesley Lynn Dog Park. This one will be primarily funded from Metro Local Share. We did submit our application, received some feedback on that. There are some elements that came up in the kind of community engagement piece. We talked a little bit about kind of like a separated large small dog area that was really popular in the community engagement piece. And then I'm trying to think of the right way to, like dog playground equipment. I mean, it's very popular if you've seen them. Some of those elements might not be fundable through the Metro Local Share program. They don't quite meet the bond requirement. So we're working with them to kind of finalize what that budget is and what it'll pay for. We put a 50-50 split in here for now, just as a placeholder, with a goal that we'll get more paid for.
Okay.
You look like you have a question about dog playground.
Oh, I've got a lot. We've got a nice dog playground, and we're struggling with accessibility in some
Yep.
other parks. I'm gonna get some questions as the park
Yeah,
chair. I'm
I
just
get
gonna start
it.
with that right now, so.
And then oh, I lost the PowerPoint up there.
The spinning wheel of death.
There we go. So Singer Creek Annex, I'm actually not sure how many people are aware that we even own this property. So this is what you would kind of consider Singer Creek proper. This is the new housing development that they just built on Holmes. This is Stafford Park here. We actually own the property that's in between the new housing development and these houses over here. This is a big kind of like long grassy field you'll see on Holmes. So we could actually develop this into a trail system that connects into Singer Creek, which then connects into the sidewalk system down the whole way into downtown, which would be a really nice piece of connectivity. One of the conditions of approval for this development when they built it was that they had to provide public access on both sides. So there's a fence, but there are gates. So there's gated access. People have started to kind of use that Singer Creek Annex as a makeshift off-leash dog area, which is, it's fine. We could probably use some improvements to really make that amenity work if that's what we wanted to do. But at some point in the past, I think it was like the past 5 years, our parks team cut a fire break into the forest in between this section. So there's already kind of this undeveloped trail that's back there. We would need to do some trail development to really kind of flesh it out, make it a good pathway. But this is kind of an easy Metro Local Share opportunity that would fit very easily into their bond criteria and be an easy win for everybody.
And I really think that, looking at the Parks Master Plan, trails, accessibility, that was number one. I mean,
Exactly.
that's gonna be a big part when we go through this whole list of what was the priority there and getting a win at that part of the city. I think it'd be big.
Yeah,
And just to understand, you're suggesting that the Metro Local Share dollars are used to create that trail,
that's
you're saying?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably wouldn't support, we would probably need to do new fence to really make it like a dog park, which they may not support because it doesn't have quite the same goal as the Wesley Lynn Dog Park where it's more habitat preservation. But the trail piece is definitely a component that would be fundable.
If there was like a natural playground for dogs, do you think that would qualify?
I already tried that with the Wesley Lynn.
That'd be hard.
They were like, like the rock out at Hazel Grove. That's like, it's a precast concrete rock, but it looks like nature play.
I've been there.
Yeah,
I know it.
exactly.
Yeah, they make that for dogs, and we pitched that to them, and they were like, no, we can't fund that.
Good.
Well, it's a good thought.
Any questions on the 25-26 project list?
I think I just have one with the Singer Creek. Would there be kind of lighting that is going through the trails? I've been to Singer Creek a decent amount of times. I play disc golf and I bike down there a lot, but I've never been in that specific area. Just thinking safety or annoying neighbors if we have lights, just light pollution. For the 40,000 that's attributed there, I know there'd be a lot of conversation, but do you plan on having lighting or is it just be like a clear trail system to get through?
I think we'd probably start with soft surface trail, just, to develop a piece of connectivity through there that would be easy for us to maintain. Probably do like compacted gravel, so probably no lighting to start with. If it really starts to develop and it turns into kind of this connectivity piece up to Holmes Lane, that's where you can talk about future allocations and development.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of animals there. I think there's a family of coyotes that lives there. It'd be nice to kind of maintain that as like a natural space. I know like pollution is definitely a concern, although there are red lights available. I guess that would be a preferable. But I guess one question about that park is, if that were to happen, you know, this year or in future years, to have that trail kind of fleshed out more, is that something that, like, there would be a large allocation for removal of invasive species? Because I haven't been on that trail in a couple months, but, you know, in the beginning of summer, I went and it was already pretty overgrown with blackberries. And I think that in terms of clearing a trail, that seems like it would be just an ongoing maintenance thing. That part of Singer Creek, I don't think was really impacted by a lot of the ivy poles as some of the areas that were closer to the creek.
Yeah, and Emily, you kind of touched a little bit on why, from a maintenance standpoint, it'd be nice to have a more developed pathway in there where we can maintain some of this and start to target, you know, this is a section that doesn't get a lot of maintenance. It's primarily just, you know, forested open space. So having access back in there would allow us to do more targeted habitat restoration. That would be a component of this project because we'd have to do it just to maintain the trail and actually develop it. So there'd be at least a limited, you know, kind of push in for the habitat restoration component, and then kind of long-term giving us more access into the park to tackle this section, which doesn't have great access today.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. All right, I will go on to fiscal year 26-27. So this is the second year of the biennium. This is where we start to have some of our kind of larger projects that we're starting the planning process now. These take longer to procure, longer to design, longer to talk with the community to really make sure that we're doing what the community wants. So the first one on the list is Hillendale restroom replacement. Hillendale restroom is one of the oldest restrooms in the park system, and it is in need of replacement. This is a very easy, very fundable project with Metro Parks. This is really focused on kind of the accessibility component of their bond. What we would seek to do is a very similar structure to what you see in the other parks, which is kind of a precast building. Typically it has some cladding around the outside to make it look nice, and focus on you know, really kind of elevating this space. One of the things that we're looking at with this project is Hillendale is a very large park, and it has these two very distinct components, and it only has one restroom. So we currently fill that with a porta potty, which we place down typically by the parking area, sometimes a little closer to the pickleball courts in the summer when it's dry. And that's down in the lower area to help kind of alleviate that need of people having to go the whole way up to the upper section. But there, you know, depending on cost, there is a potential that maybe we could do a single user restroom down at the bottom end too. So that's something we'll have to flesh out, whether it makes sense. But this is kind of, you know, our first really kind of large Hillendale Metro project. So current estimate for that is about $400,000, and we do anticipate there to be some habitat restoration components there as well along the creek. Next up on the list is Park Place Pathways and Shelter. This is funded through our SDC program. This is a project that's on the SDC project list. Park Place had the last master plan for Park Place was done in 1995, and it kind of planned out this space, which right now is mainly open field. In that 1995 master plan, they had like a sport court and some other more like developed park amenities. But in talking with the neighborhood recently and some of the people who are really active there in the neighborhood association, one of the things that they're really looking for is covered seating and a covered shelter. So we're trying to figure out a good location for that. One of the issues with this park is just drainage. The water runs off this hill. This area is very wet. So we just kind of need to be thoughtful about that for the future. And we're planning on talking with the neighborhood association more, really flesh this project out, see what they're looking for. One of the other things that they consistently bring up in conversation is just repair of some of the pathways, which is kind of a deferred maintenance project. And if we kind of expand that, build a new ADA pathway to the shelter, we can use some SDC dollars for that. Chapin Park Playground. So this is another SDC eligible project because our intention is to expand the playground. This is one of the oldest play structures in the system. It's getting to the point where it's difficult for the team to find parts for it. This would be a really good opportunity to build a more inclusive, larger play structure that meets the needs of the many families who use this park. The intention, and we'll work through a playground design and bring that to the community and to PRAC at some point for feedback, is to kind of connect the two. We have these two very distinct, kind of the large older kids play area and then a very kind of like small tots play area, create kind of one mega playground to rule them all. Part of that, sorry, I had to do a Lord of the Rings reference. Part of that intention is this particular structure that you see in the picture, the larger one, is kind of in a depression in the field, and it's Lake Chapin in the winter. So
Continually under construction in different
Yes.
places that dip through.
So
We have a water feature seasonally at the park.
a seasonal water
That we
feature.
don't really want.
My kids call it the pit whenever we go by there. So.
Exactly. So we've kind of looked at just a conceptual level design of what we could do and kind of move that up closer onto some higher ground, maybe mound it a little bit so it's draining water appropriately. But we'll work through that design process and start to engage the community on that one in the near future. And then the other project that we have budgeted for that's not necessarily a park, but is still part of our capital improvement plan is the Pioneer Center roof replacement. This is the only project that we currently have on this plan that is funded with parks donations. And that is because the Pioneer Center is our largest donation account. So they receive the most donations out of our kind of full system. They need a new roof. We're going to target them for a roof replacement. Any questions on these?
So are these in order of when they would be targeted to be done? So like we're looking at doing something, if we look at the previous one where you had 25 and 26, we've got ADAs and dog parks and pathways. Then we get to sort of family type things as we move later into the years.
Yeah.
So are they in order, or is there potential that because the Pioneer roof gets more donations, that could happen in the beginning of, I don't know, the end of 26 and ahead of Chapin Park or something like that?
Yeah, they are not in any specific construction schedule. And that's kind of what we would want to talk with you over the course of a series of meetings about this. Generally speaking, the park ones are going to be summer, just we don't want to work in the wet. Trails can be any time, and actually sometimes they're better in the fall because we can work without all the vegetation. And then same with Pioneer Center, like that's more of a timing on our end. We would try to do that around when they have their annual closure, so we're not impacting the services as much as possible. But they are not in any specific construction schedule at this point.
Okay.
I've got a few questions on it. Just for the Hillendale restroom replacement, do we know what the shelf life of that is? I'm just thinking of
10 years ago.
10 years ago. I assume if it's in there, there would be a high priority to fix, but just seeing, just on priority of moving anything around with the grant money of, if it's possible to withhold that for another 2 years or so.
Yeah, we do have a specific, I think it was 3 years ago, maybe 4. Corey, when did we do the BVTA reports?
Oh, it was right before he started, so it must have been late 2022.
Okay, so
That's our facility assessment.
yeah, so we have these facility assessment reports. They talk about the deferred maintenance. I don't have them in front of me, so I don't know the specific year, but yeah, that restroom doesn't have doors on the stalls, and I would really like to fix that.
Thank you.
So now we're getting into kind of the future, right? Like the ones that we saw before are budgeted for. Those are projects we're, in process moving forward with. Now we're getting into future budgets, potential grant opportunities. We'll talk a little bit about those. Kanema Children's Park, the shelter replacement out there, that shelter is on our deferred maintenance. It has a very unique kind of situation with its posts at the bottom. That make it a little unstable. So that's why that one's kind of up higher in priority, is we'd like to do that from a safety perspective. It's fine as it is right now, but it'd be nice to get it done in the next couple of years. Clackamette Park boat ramp. From a funding perspective, this is kind of money that's sitting there waiting for us to apply for. Obviously, there's an application process, it's not guaranteed, but Marine Board, ODFW, they view this as a high priority project. So we're trying to target this as kind of the first phase of Clackamette. This would also include many of the major parking renovations as well. So it's a pretty large project. This is where we would start to bring in larger portions of the West Good Neighbor funds, and then also looking to use this as a catalyst for future funding. So that funding that's at Marine Board, that's at ODFW, can then be matched to a Metro grant, can be matched to a state parks grant, and really start to help fund the park as a whole. We're in the process of working through a selection of a consultant to begin the design and engineering portion of this. Part of that will be community engagement on the schedule, timing, and part of it will be funding strategy. So we can try to get as much as we can done together, which makes it more efficient. But this is just a kind of a placeholder for that first phase of Clackamette. Atkinson Park redevelopment and ADA improvements. Atkinson Park is one of the older parks in our system. It has a roadway that goes up to it that is currently closed to vehicular traffic. It's pretty beat up. It's not ADA, it doesn't meet ADA code. The play structure up there is very old as well and could really use a replacement. So this is a great target for Metro local share. A nature play area up top there would fit the kind of overall theme of the park as one of our more natural areas. We could do some interpretation and look to design a more accessible pathway to the top there. That would have to go through a design process, so we would look to do that sometime, start getting that ready to go, so we could do that in the fiscal year 27-28. Old Kenema Park is another one that's a very easy kind of Metro local share project. The trail out there is fairly old. If you think about like where the parking lot is, if you go up to the right, there's been some more recent repairs to that side of the trail. But if you go to the left down to where the falls viewpoint is, that trail could really use an upgrade. That also fits into the Trails Master Plan, which has that section of the park kind of outlined as the future McLaughlin to Kenema Trail. So that would kind of help catalyze that project.
I was gonna ask, is that gonna connect with like the whole revitalization they're doing in that area, or is that a different?
That would be the plan. That's kind of dependent on their funding source. The funding source that we have access to is a little smaller, but we could help pay for the park component of it that would then tie into that future project. So up until this point, like these are pretty fleshed out, right? Like we've got some good ideas for projects. Now we're getting really into kind of more proposed projects, things where we really need to like talk to the community to see what the priorities are. So the ones you see here are Wesley Lynn Park, the infield turf installation. So Wesley Lynn has one infield turf and the other is dirt turf. It'd be great to replace that. This is where we start to introduce the idea of a parks utility fee. This would be the first large parks utility fee project. It would be approximately $500,000 to do it, really well for the long term. That's also an opportunity to partner with OCYS to develop the scope of work, grant funding, Metro enhancement grants, other things like that. Could add improvements to the dugouts, to the picnic shelter, and really make this like a tournament level ball field complex where we can kind of sell that from a rentable space perspective. This is also where we get into phase 2 of Clackamette Park, which is focused on the RV park, but it's not necessarily the RV park itself. It's more moving the RV park out of the way. Its current location is kind of prime spot for staging for the construction, and it also has to be moved so that we can develop park amenities in that space. So the scope is dependent on this outcome of the design project, the community engagement as we talk through what that future RV park looks like, and this is where we would target a land and water conservation fund grant. And now we're just going to look at the biennium. These are kind of at the tail end of the CIP, so these are more flexible, and definitely looking for input on this side of the plan. So the biennium of 2029 through 2031, Hillendale playground replacements. Chapin, Wesley Lynn, and Hillendale are probably our most popular playgrounds, and they're on the older side. Hillendale, as you can see, it doesn't have a border, it doesn't have an accessible pathway. It could be an opportunity to really build something cool there that would be all-inclusive play element for everybody that uses that park. Rivercrest Lower Shelter. Rivercrest Lower Shelter is our most popular shelter throughout the summer. It's just getting old. It'd be good to replace it from a safety perspective. That's on our deferred maintenance list. Rivercrest Spray Park replacement. This is also on our deferred maintenance list. It's working, but man, is it a task for the team to keep it running. So we've planned this to the point where it's kind of at its end of useful life in 2030. So start thinking about how we fund that now. Again, one of our most popular amenities, it's just kind of aging out. And then Clackamette Park Phase 3. So this is where we've kind of done all the infrastructure pieces in phases 1 and 2. Now we're doing the park amenities. This is where you're talking about sport courts, skate park, nature play, and all the park furnishings and habitat restoration. All right, I'm going to pause there for any questions on projects. Otherwise, I'll dive into the kind of the funding sources.
Quick question, well, this might dovetail into what you're saying. When you mentioned the Hillendale playground replacement, I'm looking here and it looks like, possible use of the park's utility fee if that moves forward, but it's also part of that metro local share, which the funds expire in 29, correct?
They have to be under contract.
Under contract, correct. What is it about that particular idea that wouldn't all fit under the metro local share? Like, why couldn't we move it up the list and have it be fully funded?
It's the timing of the money. So it's not shown here, but if you look on your handout, it breaks down the money here. And so we have 1.9 million. What is it? It's the 400,000.
Yeah.
That's what's left in 2029. So it kind of allocates whatever's left over from metro local share to that project. Again, this is draft. There's different strategies we can take with that, but that's how that's how we came up with that number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of to that point, looking at the 6-year total project costs, the overall project costs are 13.2 million. There's 6.2 million in city funds, which includes 4.3 million in SDCs, 1.6 million in potentially this park's utility fee funds, and about 300,000 in parks and recreation donations, which is the Pioneer Center roof. And then we pair that with about 6.9 million in outside funding. As I mentioned, typically our target is 50-50. You'll see that we're slightly above that. That's because there's not really a match component to most of the metro local share projects, except where those elements don't meet the bond criteria. And that's paired with 4.9 million in state and federal grants, which is outlined on your handout. Talking about kind of opportunities and risks, right? So why have a CIP and what's a downside of a CIP? So the kind of first bullet points are the opportunities, the second lower bullet points are the risks. One of the great opportunities is the first 2 years of this plan are pretty darn firm in our funding. A lot of these things are in our budget. We can get these done. They're, very fundable from our funding sources. But the risk to that is that future years depend on additional funding streams, and we're going to really have to explore what that looks like. So are we targeting grants? What grants are we targeting? What is our strategy for that? That's going to be a lot of our work in the next 2 years. The timing of that is going to be key, making sure, some of these things like land and water is a federal grant. You apply for it in November. You don't hear until typically March timeframe. You're not awarded that money for typically another year. So it just takes a long time to get some of these things running. So we need to start that work now. Parks utility fee or some other type of funding source, that's going to take time to work through with PRAC, with City Commission, with the community. What are they willing to accept? What are they willing to pay? What can we fund with that? And that's where this all kind of ties together, is it does give us the opportunity to engage, and that's our second opportunity here. The plan can be flexible based on opportunities that present themselves. I'm actually going to jump to the third one for this one. Each biennium is an opportunity to refine and engage the public. You know, this is an opportunity where typically a CIP is looked at every year as part of your budget. This is what we got done. This is what we've got left. We can revise. We can revise based on opportunities that present themselves. But lack of consensus on prioritization can just keep things stagnant and stuck. And then the last opportunity and risk is the plan can be flexible based on opportunities. I think we're going to talk today about an opportunity that kind of presented itself in a rapid fashion, and that will, as it progresses, that we can add into our CIP list. But the risk to that is that too many changes or additions. We have a limited project staff that deliver these projects, and if we're constantly updating it, it can just lead to project overwhelm. Thank you. We'll just open it up to general questions.
Well, thank you, Tom, for going through that whole list. I know it's something you've been working on for a little while. I think my first question, and you kind of just answered it, is once we set this plan in motion, how flexible is it? Is it something we revisit every 2 years, or is it something where we just kind of, I don't know. I think you just mentioned it specifically that I was going to ask, but just want to confirm, we can still change the priority and everything based off what comes in. This is just kind of, here's what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, and I would say at a minimum every 2 years, definitely as part of the budget process. But really, we would want to get in a habit of reviewing this kind of every year after the fiscal year ends, so we can kind of report out to the community, here's what we got done, here's what's taking more time than we planned on, here's what came up that we didn't plan for, that we're being opportunistic and finding those revenue sources that come up really quickly and doing a project that maybe we didn't even know about, that the community came and said, hey, we need to do X, and we're able to do that. So I think at a minimum, we're reporting on it pretty regularly, and then really like diving deep on what those future bienniums look like as part of the budget process.
I have one quick follow-up. A couple of years ago, we did an engagement survey with the community. We got the Parks Master Plan. How well would you say this next 6 years of projects addresses the major needs which the community stated we need in our parks? Or is there anything missing from this capital improvement plan that just isn't matching what the community said that they wanted in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd have to go back and maybe at our next meeting, that can be a piece we bring back and show like, this is how it fits into each of these buckets. I think that'd be a good exercise.
Is it possible for our next meeting to kind of print out the plan and the surveys? I'm not sure everyone on the committee has seen that. I mean, I've been around for a long time now, and I've kind of memorized a lot of it, but I think it'd just be good when we're looking at this of the community. I mean, we spent a lot of resources to make that, create the plan just before finalizing that to make sure we're addressing what, the populace, the people want in regards to their parks. I think this hits a lot of it from what I remember.
Yeah.
Water access was a big one, trails was a big one, accessibility in our parks is something I hear about a lot. So when I see renovations to Chapin Park, I know that's open-ended, but that's exciting. ADA pathway, maybe something in Rivercrest that opens it up to more of the community, which Oregon City doesn't do right now. Those are the exciting portions, but it was a giant document.
Yes.
And I can't remember the 55 categories they had and the areas that's there. And something, and I feel remiss if I didn't mention it, that Ken would always mention is there any part of this plan with like future land buying, purchasing, or there's a lot of areas where it's just underrepresented for parks. I don't see them in this list at all.
Yeah, so we don't have land acquisition on this list today.
It's capital improvement, yeah.
yeah.
My fault.
Right. So that, I definitely think we need to start thinking about that maybe in almost like a land bank plan. Where should we be targeting acquisitions and our SDC funds for where the city's going to grow in the future so that we can get good land now, right? And acquire the land that's going to be useful for us rather than being kind of stuck with whatever's left. Especially as an older city, it's really important that we do that kind of upfront.
To piggyback off that, I know Park Place is historically and currently just been a really underserved area in terms of green space. And I know that the comprehensive plan that was discussed with all of those options, that was also like quantified in that as well. Is that an area that has been evaluated for potential new green space?
So if I remember correctly, the Park Place concept plan, which is currently in a stage of development, includes 2 parks in that area. One is a neighborhood park and one is a community park. I think it's 5 acres and 8 acres. So that is, we baked that into our master plan as new parks in that area that serve that region. Other than that, I'm not aware of any land that we could acquire today that would serve that same need. But if we found something and somebody was, offering land up for sale and it made sense, that would definitely be something we would target. That is an area that's underserved, and it is why we, specifically targeted that for a project in this biennium, so we can get them some improvements.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think, this goes back to even tying back to your question, Tim, about are we looking at future land acquisitions for those needs? And it's related to the capital improvement plan, but it maybe is a little bit of a separate component. But just to be sure, we're very much tracking that those needs. Those are somewhat opportunistic at times, and then we can be strategic about it as well. And then what Tom was just referring to about Park Places, we're working currently with the developers of the park plan area, that the Park Place plan area. So we're gonna connect all those dots. Those are kind of things that we're working around the edges on, but that'll become more concrete as we move forward here. So just be assured that we're very much looking at the land acquisition opportunities, but they're not necessarily part of our improvement plan per se. And we do have money in our SDC fund to look at opportunistic situations that arise.
Thank you.
Looking at in the near future, some of the funding sources, when we look at grants, especially when you mention federal grants, with such significant changes in the past year or couple years, and surprise changes at that sometimes, do you anticipate or have you built in possibility of those funds just not being available or something like that?
Yeah, our conversations so far with the agencies that manage those funds is that the funds are still available. Typically, the change is more in the application process than the availability of funds, but it is definitely something we're tracking. The Land and Water Conservation Fund in particular is one that I follow pretty closely. There was an allocation a couple years ago as part of the Great American Outdoors Act that kind of gave a big shot in the arm to that program. So far, it seems like that funding is holding steady. We'll see where it goes from there. We did, one of the targets for the boat ramp is sport fish restoration funds, which are federal funds through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Those funds are pretty safe. They're out there ready for us when we're ready.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or discussion on the capital improvement plan? I don't think we need any motion here, but it was good to see, review, and look at what's upcoming or what's planning to be upcoming.
I think tonight was just, we wanted to introduce this to you, begin the conversation. We'll bring it back to you again at the next meeting. We'll kind of refine the conversation. We've heard some of your feedback tonight. That'll help us kind of bring back some additional info, but I think it's, leading to some point of having a recommendation of support from PRAC for whatever our list might look like. But that can happen over multiple meetings, and it's a lot of information to digest. So.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I want for next meeting is just reviewing the survey we sent out, and I know that can be pushed back from a lot of people I reached out to in the community to do the survey of, hey, I said this and this is the priority, but it's nowhere on the list. So yeah, if we can get that for next time, that would be awesome. All right, well, let's move forward to our next point of business, the Barclay Park off-leash dog area update.
So I want to give you just an overview of this situation. We didn't put a written staff report together for this, but just kind of conversational here, and then potentially consideration by the committee for recommendation of some sort or not, your prerogative. Back in 2015, the city did not have any formal developed dog parks. So there was a lot of feedback from the community through our master planning processes, but also just community input. And members of the committee were, bringing forward their neighbors are asking, have been saying, why don't we have dog parks? So that was certainly on the development horizon for the city at that time, but it hadn't taken place yet. And so the PRAC actually came up with a solution that was, let's do some temporary designated areas within parks, and let's look at strategically locating those geographically across the city so that people had access to a dog area that they could take their dogs and be off leash legally. We know that lots of people use our various parks with no leashes, where there aren't dedicated dog areas. That's just something that we don't have, we can try to control as much as we can, but having designated areas where it's like, these are the areas where it's legal to do so, because of course we have leash laws in the parks. So at that time, the committee came up with a proposal, and it had three sites that they landed on to again, geographically. Park Place Park, Barclay Park, which is just down the hill, 12th Street, just a little bit up from Washington. And then Wesley Lynn was the other. Wesley Lynn is where the area we designated is now where we're developing a formal developed dog park that was in the CIP and part of the discussion tonight. So that recommendation was that these areas would be designated, not the whole park, but parts of the park that was allowed for people to have their dogs off leash, still had to have their dogs under control, and there were some parameters around that. And that was brought to the commission as a recommendation. It was approved. The parameters at that point were that this was going to be a one-year pilot program. This was during the time that I was here previously, that it was initiated, and then I left, and so I've gone back, Tom and I have been talking, and we've gone back through some records and looked at what conversations did or didn't transpire with regard to the one-year trial period or the pilot program. We don't find any designation by either the commission or a PRAC recommendation that, we're lifting the pilot program or we're doing something. It just seems to have continued.
It became the status quo.
Yeah, that's very well said. So what we know is, I would say the biggest success story out of this is the area that we designated in Wesley Lynn was the undeveloped area in the back of the park, kind of towards Leland. It's so well used and became so popular of a site that we decided that needed to be a formal dog park, and we've put together funding, and we're going to build that this coming year. In the time that transpired as well, we do have another dog park. It's at Tyrone S. Woods Park, and that's been open now for a while, and that's seems to be well utilized. The other sites, Park Place Park, I would say just more kind of anecdotal observation is it seems to be decently used. We don't really hear a lot of feedback from the neighborhood or users, so I think the understanding is that it seems to be working fine. There may not be a lot of use of that, but certainly whatever there is happening is fine. The reason that we specifically put on the agenda the Barclay Park, but I would say you could apply this to all three of those parks, or, well, Wesley Lynn is kind of becoming a formal dog park, so maybe that doesn't really necessarily need to be addressed, but the remaining two is we've heard some recent feedback. There's some concerns about the use of Barclay Park, and essentially the concerns that have been expressed are that people are not controlling their dogs within that, and the off-leash area is not being well controlled per se. So we bring this to you for just information first, and secondly, potentially consideration of, does PRAC wish to revisit this designation, and do you wish to make any kind of recommendation? Do you want to review this? We're just kind of teeing this up with you tonight. Again, not a formal recommendation this evening. And, you know, again, the one where we've heard the potential feedback for concerns is this Barclay Park. And, you know, do we need to look at that? So again, something to consider is since we did this program, you know, over 10 years ago or about 10 years ago, we have one developed dog park in the city. We're going to have two within the next year. And we probably will consider, you know, looking at other dog parks as we develop new or redeveloping existing parks over time. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor. The two formal dog parks will be up more on the hilltop area, so we don't have the middle of the city represented, and we don't have the north end at Park Place area represented with any formal dog park development. So is that part of the conversation? Do we want to look at other areas to designate these off-leash uses? So I just kind of wanted to tee it up that way, let you think about that and see if there's any interest in having further conversation about this.
Before they do that, that's why I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to come talk?
Absolutely.
Please come up.
Yeah, I wish I had asked you to change the agenda around. I still have to go to the South End Neighborhood Association tonight.
Oh,
And I didn't know that was gonna take that long.
I know.
Oh, my God.
I thought you were hanging out.
Yeah, I have to be everywhere all the time. So anyway, Denise McGriff, Mayor of the City of Oregon City, and the reason that I'm here tonight is to basically discuss this issue with you on Barclay Park. And I'm going to just tell you what has transpired and the reason why I asked for this to be put on the agenda. We have had over the last, so I go online, community in my neighborhood, McLaughlin, is asking about this park. I go online and I said, well, this is a temporary experiment, but the experiment's been going on since 2015. So first of all, I want to tell you that it is one of our neighborhood parks in the McLaughlin neighborhood, but I can tell you, me personally, I don't go over there anymore because there's people running around with dogs. And if you want to go there and have a picnic or sit on the lawn, it's not really great. And so wherever the dog park area is supposed to be, that is not what's happening. It's just, when people are there with their dogs, they're just running all over the place. And I'm talking about, so the situation came about, I'm sure you're aware, for the last 13 years, the neighborhood association has been dealing with the location of Father's Heart in the neighborhood. A lot of people that come there, the guests, have dogs. They don't necessarily abide by the rules and regulations. I'm not saying it's all of them, I'm just saying it's some of them. But what has come to my attention is that some of the guests are just letting their dogs run rampant. It's also become an area where the dogs are rushing people who have their dogs there who are under control like they're supposed to be. And there's been issues with dog conflicts. There's issues with people conflicts because, you know, the residents who want to use the park for something other than dogs don't feel safe going over there. It's not all the time. It's not every day. It's been intermittent, but it's come to me enough times that I talked to city manager and I said, we have to do something about this. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but I guess at this point in time, I'd like to recommend to you, since you're going to make an advisory thing, is that we temporarily suspend the off-leash until we can get some control over exactly what is happening there and what is not happening there with guests and other people, so that people do have to have their dogs on a leash and that they're not just, you know, throwing their ball and wandering all, you know, and they're going all over the place. We also have, just so you're aware, that in the little ravine that's adjacent to the park, which is part of the park, there's camping going on. We recently had somebody start a campfire and set one of the trees on fire. That happened recently, and luckily it was put out very quickly, but still, there's just a whole bunch of issues that go beyond dogs that are happening in that park, which are, and even though we have our neighbors at Father's Heart telling their clients that they are not to be camping there and that, you know, you need to keep your dog on leash, whatever, it's just not happening. And I think one of the things that I had asked to be done is make sure, so the signs that we had there that says that the park closes at 10 o'clock, they've all been ripped down. So we need to repost the park to say that the park closes at, what is it 10 o'clock? Whatever time it is, that's posted, and that it's up high enough somewhere so that it can't be ripped off, and that there be some indication somewhere that, you know, that we, you know, not that we've suspended it, but that temporarily, until we can further evaluate, you keep your dog on a leash. It's just, you know, I hate to even have to even bring this to you, but it's happened enough times that the community has talked to me about it or said, what can we do about it? And I actually sent several people the agenda and said, please be here tonight. I don't want to be the only one talking about it because I don't have a dog and I'm not taking my dog there. But I do, no matter where I'm traversing in the city, I'm always going around 12th Street. I come down 12th Street or I go up 12th Street and I go wander around, and I'm coming down 13th, I'm coming down John Adams, so that I'm randomly going at different times of the day. And so what I'm getting this information from is all the people that are adjacent to the park, and their frontage is on the park, and so they're looking at the park and seeing what's going on. So I just said, look, I would bring it to the attention of the city manager. He talked to Scott. That's why you've got it. So this is what I know. I've only observed one incident myself, but the others are, you know, people telling me about it. So I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice by keeping the website says Barclay Park, it's a temporary thing, because obviously since 2015, to me, that's more than temporary. And I think that we need to, you know, eventually the facility at 12th and Washington is going to move, and maybe that's the time to reevaluate it. Once that move has taken place, so that we can actually see how the community itself is using. And I'm not saying that the people that are guests at Father's Heart are not part of the community, but we're just, it's just becoming a problem. And unfortunately, it's disappointing that these incidents are happening. And then I wanted to add, maybe you weren't aware about Park Place Park, but the Housing Authority of Clackamas County is going to be redeveloping their property, and there is going to be a large community park, not super large like our standards, but it's going to be available to people who live in Park Place. So that's another opportunity for us to partner with them, maybe on their plans. They've come to the City Commission once or twice to show us what they're doing, but we're still waiting. They haven't started construction. The other thing I hear from Park Place people is that the parks are all south of Holcomb, and we only have one park north of Holcomb. So that's something that you need to take into consideration when you're looking at that, because there's only that one undeveloped Park Place Park on the north side of Holcomb. And other than that, you know, like you said, it's not there. There's nothing there. So that is all I know about Park Place. So I'm happy to sit here while you have your discussion, because obviously I have a lot to say about it.
I think my follow-up or to start the discussion is, let's say we make the change, we do a temporary notice. How much stress do you feel this will put on law enforcement to enforce it, or on the Parks District to enforce it? It's like, just because this has been going on for a decade, just because we put a sign there, what's the pushback, and how can we actually enforce this? To make the change that people want.
I don't know if it's going to be super enforceable unless, you know, there's somebody's, then the one neighbor that recently reported to me that a loose dog, she had her dog on a leash, and the loose dog that came from the block away charged her dog, and she had to step in between herself and the dog. And I said, I don't know if I would do that, but you know. So I think it's a matter of us having to talk to, you know, some of the people who are adjacent. I don't think it's going to be a big you know, we're not going to be calling Oregon City Police to say, hey, there's dogs off the leash. But I think when there is an incident, it gives us something to say, hey, you're supposed to have your dog on a leash. We will pass that on to our friends at Father's Heart and say, you have to have your dog on a leash. Period. That sort of thing. I don't think the neighbors are going to call non-emergency line for off-leash dogs. And so it affects everybody, but, you know, short of shutting it down entirely, which I don't think would be helpful, at least to the neighbors who live nearby who have pets, something in the middle that would at least give people some sense of safety and security. You know, again, I live near, I don't live nearest to it, but I live in that area, so I haven't been in, I mean, other than dealing with stuff that had to do with the ravine, I just don't use the park anymore because it, you know, you don't know if you're gonna be walking around on stuff that's not supposed to be on the ground that should have been cleaned up.
And that's what I
Joyce,
wanted
good.
to mention was when I would drive by the Barclay Park, at first, we had the dog pots, you know, they had the bags and we had a garbage can there and that, for the first year that happened. And then suddenly there were dog pots, but there were no garbage
Garbage
cans.
cans, yes.
And I was going, you're expecting the people to take that home with them, which,
Or
you know,
put it in
me
the
as a
neighbor's
proud dog
garbage
owner,
can, just what
I'd put it
happens.
in my car and, you know, drive it home and put it in my garbage can. But most people wouldn't do that. So I was kind of wondering, in this discussion about those temporary dog parks, has something that PRAC is needed to talk about and bring back to the city commission. And I completely agree with the mayor that Barclay Park turns out was not a good off-leash dog area, and to put back signs that say dogs on leash are welcome seems very, very reasonable.
And I'm not saying forever, but I'm saying as a temporary measure to try to control some of the inappropriate interactions that are occurring there that weren't a problem when we first started it. And I, you know, again, I'm not against dogs, I'm not against that. We're trying to do something where we're trying to control, hopefully help control the behavior of the people who are bringing the dogs that's causing the problem, and then there's the subsequent. I know we can't do anything about, we're doing as much as we can with the camping. I know that the police are over there 2 or 3 times a week dealing with the camping situation, and a lot of the people who are camping have dogs, which is.
To Joyce's point on that, are there dollars or is there a fund available to, if we were to make this an on-leash, please leash your dogs area, one, the signage that you've talked about for the park closures, as well as the signage and general letting the public know that we've made a change, as well as adding something like garbage cans that make it more hospitable. Is that something that we have within budget that we can do?
I think they took the garbage cans out because it wasn't just for the dog poop. It was a lot of
The
the
population area.
people just,
Well, I
stopping
can-
through the neighborhood, the campers,
Yeah.
were using that, and it became a rodent problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, I forgot
so-
about that. That's so, yeah.
There are signs at all the other parks, you know, for dogs on leash. And there
So-
are signs that say, you know, closes at dusk and opens at sunrise or something similar to that.
So we, the signage is not a big expense. We do
Yeah.
those in-house, so that's really easy for us to produce. So if there was an action that prompted, you know, changing the rules at that park, we would be able to do the signage thing. Right now, there is a sign that does show that it's an off-leash dog area. So we take that out. If the rule changed, we'd take that out and we'd put in, you know, our park rules, basically. We have park rules at some of our parks, not all of it's a pretty small park, relatively speaking. So not every small park has all the park rules, but you know, to educate the community and the neighbors and the users of the park, you know, if this were the direction this went, we would put up a park rule signage that one of those things would be that dogs must be leashed and the park closes and opens at these times. So that's not a major expense. The garbage can, I suspect you're correct, but I wasn't here when that decision occurred, so I'd have to go back and look into the justification of that and whether that's still, if there are concerns about putting garbage cans back in at that site, I don't know. It is typical that we have garbage cans at our parks, and it's also typical that we have the dog waste mitts and all those kind of things at some of those heavily used parks with dogs. So those are maintenance and operational issues that we would look at. But yeah, the signage is not a big expense for
I
us.
mean, at least it could just say temporary.
Sure.
It's temporary. You know, we are still evaluating it, and since it's listed as being temporary, now it's gonna be temporary the other way because we need to evaluate it.
Right.
And since that time, we've opened up Tyrone Woods, you know,
And-
the fenced dog park, since we
And do we have the timeline for the West Woodland Dog Park? Not that it would affect my decision here, but it was I know it's in the 25 plan. I'm just thinking if we, given the dog parks was one of the more requested item that we add to our parks, taking away a dog park or an off-leash area in an area, just being able to like have a give and take, we're adding this place, we've added this prior, we're gonna remove this, but there's still a large part of the city that doesn't have a dog park area. Just having that conversation. I mean, it makes sense for the temporary base to do that, but we should be able to look at a place to, have an area for that somewhere around there. There's a lot that I had in that comment. I was mainly
It's okay.
thinking out loud.
I'll mention the timeline piece first. So
Thank you.
as I mentioned, we're kind of working through the details with Metro right now. Once that IGA is executed, we're targeting kind of spring construction, so we can bid it in the rainy season when we get better bids. And then once we get into the kind of drier season, we can actually construct it with fewer stormwater concerns.
Tom, so do people know where the off-leash part is of the park? Because what I
would say
see
no.
is they just use the
It's
whole
not well,
thing.
Yeah, it's not well.
it's not well posted there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, it's because that was another question I got asked, well, where is that part? I said, well, right now, people think it's the whole thing. And I said, it is not the whole thing according to what was.
It's not the ball field, and
No.
it's not the playground.
No,
No. There is also, it's not our property, the school
School.
district, they're actually constructing a fence along their property.
yeah, I know, because they've had problems with
Yeah.
stuff, and there's a little play structure there and so forth, but
So they're working on that right now, I believe.
yeah. I just wonder if they're planning on, it's a designated historic landmark, and I wonder if they're going to plan to put up a chain link fence, which is not allowed under the
Yeah.
city's requirements. Even though there's one there now, but it was there when we acquired it, so. But anyway, so like I said, I'm just bringing this to your attention because it has been brought to my attention. And, if you have a suggestion for, how we go about that, I don't know, does this have to go to the city commission in any way, or?
It does. This is an advisory committee, so they don't make rules, but they definitely can recommend. And what we did figure out in our record look back was that the PRAC recommended the program, and the city commission then approved it. And so I think to unwind it, we would want to take anything that this board recommends back to the commission.
I would only talk about unwinding it for that park only. I'm not talking about all the other parks. Because as he stated, there hasn't been problems. And again, I want to be very clear, I'm not blaming all the situation on, or even suggesting that it's all coming from the guests at Father's Heart. But the people who have spoken to me have indicated that some of the interaction has to do with that facility, not all of it.
Emily, go ahead.
I guess,
Oh.
yeah, one thought or question I had is, are there alternative sites that could temporarily be opened while this park is closed that are in that, not within 5 blocks, but like within walking distance, say, of that area? At one point,
No.
I was talking with members of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and this was like probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it was the beginning of a conversation about the potential for that bottom area of Waterboard, kind of where there's a lot of gravel. There's a lot of off-leash dogs over there. It's not currently being used for anything that I know of. I know there was like storage over there, kind of peripheral to that. And that's a trail as well that has been extensively used for people walking their dogs off leash for years. Is there a possibility like for doing something like that, or?
Where we are right now at the city commission is we've asked the city Public Works Department for a tentative schedule of when they plan to move out of the upper yard, as they're calling it, the upper area. That is now a charter park. It was designated officially. We're waiting for, 2 of the things that are delaying the complete removal is that we need to relocate the decant facility. So after the vac trucks and stuff go around, they have to have some place to dump it. And you don't want to put that next to a residential area because it doesn't really smell very good and doesn't look very good either. So the decant is still on the main part of the property. And then we've asked about the upper yard because again, it is, it's still occupied by some public works facilities. I think the city's also allowed contractors to use the gravel areas for staging or putting some of their equipment. So all of that has to unwind itself in order for the park to, to be whatever it's going to be in the future. There's, as I recall, when we were doing the Parks Master Plan, we talked about looking at some sort of a feasibility study or a master plan. What do we want that park, to be? I know the McLaughlin neighborhood has some pretty strong feelings about it, but, it's not just a McLaughlin neighborhood park. It does, it is a city park, and now it is a city charter park. We've had some unfortunate incidents, of course, camping there as well. We have a lot of ivy pools that go on in there because, it just went everywhere, and you just think like you get a lot of it cleaned up and then there's more, but no, there hasn't been, Emily, any consideration at this particular time to do that. People do go up there walking. It's one of the areas I do walk up, and I do go up because I still remember back when you could drive up there. And the second time I did it, I did need to exercise my all-wheel drive, but the road had not completely deteriorated the way it is now. I mean, there's no way I'd drive up there now, but of course it's blocked off. But that's back when I moved here, you could drive all the way up to the top and all the way back down. So that has not been looked at this point in time.
I would just add on to the mayor's comment that I would suggest that if the committee was going to think about an alternate site, we would probably want to do a little bit of research and have a thoughtful conversation about some potential other locations. And we've talked at just a very high level within the staff about, maybe some alternate locations. But I think want to bring that back to you with some pros and cons, and, not to get bogged down on any particular site right now, but whether we would want to designate a different site and what the parameters would look like. Because obviously we did this before, and we didn't go back to the, if it just continued or not. So I think we'd want to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you want to look for an alternative site, but I think based on the comments and concerns that I hear, I don't want this to take 6 months to say, okay, now you need to keep your dogs on the leash. I think we, to alleviate some of the conflicts, it would help. But then again, to look at it from a proactive point of view, looking at saying, well, you can, bring your, dogs up here. I mean, again, as a person who does like to hike and walk around, I don't assume that every dog that I encounter is a friendly dog, because that's not feasible, at least my friends that tell me who have dogs. So I think we've got two issues here. We've got people who want to have a place for their dogs to run, but you also have people who want to go walk or hike, and they don't want to have a strange dog come wandering up to them, even if people tell you that their dogs respond to voice commands. Some do, some don't. So you want to make sure that both parties are safe, so that you don't have to, worry about, somebody's dog coming up on you, like, and again, you don't know whether they're friendly or not.
If we went ahead and made a recommendation to make this an on-leash temporarily, as you've suggested, is there an ability, or how long does it take? Could we talk to residents then after, say it's 6 months, that's the temporary, or a year, whatever we decide, and then re-look at like a community engagement, maybe not a full process, but to see what do we think, then versus now? Is there precedent for doing that?
I sit on a committee at our neighborhood association. I had planned to bring this to their attention and to talk to them about it based on what I've heard from community members, but your meeting comes before their meeting. So again, my comment went through the city manager and the comments that I've been getting. So I will make a commitment to you that I will bring this up at the neighborhood association, not only the steering committee, but the general meeting. Steering committee is coming up this month. And then the regular meeting is the following month, but I'll let the neighborhood chair know, and kind of go from there. And I can get back feedback to them to let them know what's going on and what I've asked about and you're gonna consider. So I can at least do that loop for you at that point.
All right.
So anyway, thank you for hearing me out, and I will get back to, the constituents that have contacted me, and I said, thanks for letting me come to the meeting by myself, but it's appreciative. I know that we're in the market of making things accessible for people, and we want to problem solve, and we want to make sure that, everybody's needs, are met. And again, it only takes, one person to sort of mess things up, as we indicated with our poor elevator again. So they finally got the window back in, they caught the person that kicked in the doors again. I just, I don't quite understand some of that mentality, but, we have nice parks in Oregon City, and, we have some people that just don't care about that, so. But in terms of the Holmes Park development, so some of you know or don't know, but anyway, I'm a longtime volunteer for the historic William L. Holmes House, and we have a very large front yard, which has got a rose garden, all that. We were really worried when Holmes Park opened that we were gonna have people coming over thinking it was their personal dog park. So far, we've only had one minor incident. I think that they are going over to Singer Creek Park, which, again, that's not that kind of a park. It's more of a, it's sort of a wildlife park. I mean, every time I go there, I see something that I didn't know those were living here. So, it's one of those things where, I'm not sure whether, like you said, the gates are still closed in terms of whether they're, they do have people who have dogs, because I see the signs posted on their property says, don't leave whatever on our property. So they're going somewhere. I don't know if they're going over to Stafford or whatever, but it certainly has changed sort of the composition of the neighborhood, so it's been interesting. They have a parking problem, I can tell you that for sure. So it's interesting just to observe when I'm out working in the yard and seeing kind of what's going on. So anyway, thank you, and I'm gonna head over to the South End Neighborhood Association meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
No, thank you so
And
much for
sharing
having me
everything.
come, and I, appreciate it. Whatever you guys decide to do with your appointments or your interviews, so I would say get them in early. If there's terms coming up at the end of the year, it'd be helpful for me to be able to work with you to get appointments made before the end of the year. I think that would be the best, and I think I talked to you, you had talked to me about it, I should say, you talked to me about it.
Yeah.
So that we don't have a lag in the folks that want to stay and all that. I think that's kind of what I'm asking for some of the other boards too, is that, earlier is better than late. So, and Hannah Schmidt is helping on that with some of the other appointments that are coming up. There's so many, I can't keep track of them all. That's why I love you guys, you keep track of all that. Yes, so that would be really helpful.
That's our next topic, so we'll
Yes.
come up with a date that works well.
Sure.
It's early in December,
Yeah.
hopefully.
I'm hoping that if people do apply for PRAC and they apply for something else, it would be really helpful if they submitted separate information. One year we had 5 or 6 or 7 openings, and people used the same thing that they said for the library board as they did for PRAC, and of course, they're not really the same thing.
Yep.
It made that process really difficult to try to separate stuff, because I participated with the library board, I participated with the Arts Commission, I participated with you guys and others, and it was like, I think I've seen this application before. So I don't know how we fix that. Maybe Jacob has an idea about how to.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a
Chat with him about
supplemental
it.
page if you're applying, because they just have a box, you can check everything, and I'm.
Yes, and we get lots of applications where people apply for multiple
Yes, and they
committees
really
and
didn't
boards.
intend to, as I
Yes.
found out.
Or they did intend to, and they don't really know
Yeah,
where they want to end up.
exactly, yes. Yeah, when you get an application and they ask you what the committee does that they're applying for,
Yeah.
that's an interesting conundrum. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Denise.
Well, that's what I was going to open up the conversation for. Would anybody like to make a recommendation on this portion before we move on to the next part, or is there any other discussion that any members would like to take place?
Personally, I'm hearing from the mayor that several constituents, it doesn't sound like a single complaint. It sounds like there've been several complaints. I don't know if other complaints came into the park department separately from this, but that to me says it feels like a bit of an urgent issue, especially since it is overdue to have reevaluated this. So I would feel that making a recommendation to put it, to recommend it being an on-leash park temporarily would be doable tonight. But I don't know if others feel that way, since we have missing PRAC members.
I mean, we do have enough for a quorum to make a motion. You would need to make a motion to recommend ending the temporary off-leash for Barclay Park. And you can also put a clause in on when to review it, or when that would end, or you can leave that open-ended. But you would need to make a motion to recommend. But we can also have a discussion on, if we want to make the motion or hold off, as we did in some other decisions that we had covered earlier. Yeah.
I'd like to hear from other members if they'd like to discuss if we'd make a motion or not.
I also agree. It sounds like there were a lot of complaints being made about the off-leash animals, and it sounds like there's some urgency behind it. So I'd be fine making a motion today if we needed to, and voting on that tonight.
Yeah, we do have the ability to do that. If anybody has a specific motion to make, please bring it forth. The worst thing that can happen is it gets voted down.
Okay, I move that we end the temporary off-leash dog experiment at Barclay Hills Park in a temporary status, until with an open-ended timeline, until we can have more information, with the clause that we would also seek input from community members at this new iteration of the park.
I second that.
Okay. Corey, can we get a roll call on that motion?
You sure can. Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
Erin McClellan,
Yes.
Tim Leonhardt,
Yes.
Melissa Dio,
Yes.
and Emily Lisborg.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
We'll take that recommendation to city commission
Just
at
trying to make sure we get it
our earliest opportunity, whatever that, we'll have to figure out what meeting that can land on their agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, my thought of it was, at the worst, we can always redo that motion at another point if there's a big issue, since temporary can last 10 years or a month or two. It's very open-ended, so awesome. Let's go ahead and move to the next spot, which is, as highlighted before by the mayor, upcoming committee vacancies and term expirations. Corey, I think you've got this one, or
Can I
Scott,
take
or
this one
Tom?
on?
Go for it, please.
Okay. So we do have Mr. Tim Leonhardt and Miss Joyce Gifford, that your terms are expiring as of the 31st of December of this year. We do have 2 additional spots, actually 3. One is still that youth spot, but we still have 2 spots as well. So there would be 4 spots available at the end of this year. You're both very welcome to reapply. I do currently have 4 applications for people that have already applied. 2 of them come from McLaughlin neighborhood, and we already have McLaughlin represented. So we would be able to take one of those, not the 2. So I wanted to go over a little bit what that timeline looks like for the interview process. We typically do that within the first week or 2 of December. And so I don't know if we want to look at calendars and figure out when that would work. We don't typically meet in November or December. Those both happen to fall on the holidays. But we do meet early December for that interview process. And we can certainly stick to a Thursday.
Looking for family calendar real quick.
Right.
Sorry for the pause there.
Same thing.
I mean, yeah, I would say, just look at my own schedule, and please, everyone else, feel free to speak up on this. The first or second week of December would be best. It kind of gives you that buffer after
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and then gives you enough time if you're going to be traveling or taking 2 weeks off during the other holidays that month. Either one would work for me, the December 4th or December 11th, if we want to keep on a Thursday.
I will be out of town December 7 through 13. So of those two, I would choose December 4, and probably would not be able to attend something in that second week of December.
Either one of those dates work for me. And I guess, would it be at the same time? Like, would we be talking about like a 6 o'clock schedule or?
Yes, I think that what we had done last year, oh, it's 8 o'clock right on that. I think that what we had done last year is hold the interviews, and then did we debrief immediately after?
Yes, we did
Yeah.
we did an interview portion.
Yeah, so, and they will be split into two separate meetings, with two separate agendas. One really, depending on how many interviews we have scheduled at the time, will determine kind of the length of that meeting. And then we would go into the following meeting immediately to debrief, and then we would, provide those recommendations to the mayor, and she would be the one to appoint, people to those seats.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
Melissa, were you able to look, is there December 4th, December 11th, or either of those issues in your calendar?
I don't see any calendar issues on those dates.
I mean, with the mayor's request of getting it done sooner than later, I mean, I would make a motion to recommend December 4th be the date for interviews. So we can get that earlier in the month, and it gives more time for the holidays to process as well.
Sure.
I second the motion.
And in looking at the schedule for this room, it's available both of those Thursdays. Oftentimes, this room can be taken with other boards and committees, but there is availability for both of those. So, we will shoot for the 4th. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and talk to the other PRAC members, make sure that that works for the majority, and then I'll confirm and send you guys out an invite for that.
There was a motion and a second, so I probably do need to
I
vote on that.
would say, I think we have
Oh,
to
there
make
was it,
formal.
okay.
I'm putting it on, so Tim and Ken can't do anything. That's their fault.
Got it. Well, let's do a roll call just for the fun of it. Joyce Gifford.
Yes.
Erin McClellan.
Yes.
Tim Lanehart.
Yes.
Emily Lisborg.
Yes?
And Melissa Dio.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Ken should have thought of his knees beforehand if he wanted
right.
to. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I will also say that I will send out, probably early November. There is a list of interview questions. I'll have these guys review those first, and then I'll send, those to you guys. And if you have anything that you want to modify or change, just keep in mind that we do have about 15 minutes per interview.
Was there a rule that the interview questions had to be the same? I know they have to be the same across each applicant. However, do they have to be the same across any other boards? Like, are there any rote questions that have to be in there?
I don't believe so.
Thanks for bringing up the opportunity to adjust the questions. I didn't know that existed, and I think we have good opportunity there.
Yeah, so I'll send those out, you guys can review them, and then we'll go from there.
And if we are being interviewed,
Yes.
okay, do I sit on the interviews for any of the other people?
I
Or
don't
do
believe so.
So I don't even need to be there except for my appointed interview?
Correct. For whatever reason, I think we allowed,
We allowed Steve to be there even though his term had
Yes,
expired.
that's
because he
right,
wasn't
because-
reapplying.
right, that's.
Oh, we
that's
did,
right.
you're correct.
His term hadn't expired yet, and he wasn't reapplying to be there, so Steve was able to be there, but Ken had to leave.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so you would not sit on those neither of
So we
you
get-
would sit on the other.
I'd like to go back and say that any date works. Ken's knees are great. If I reapply, we'll see. I think I've been on the board. I don't know, Emily, how long have we been on the board for? 4 years now?
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I remember both of your interviews.
Yeah, I think I've
There-
interviewed twice now.
There used to be some limitations as far as consecutive terms went, but in the last bylaw update, we did away with that. So you could just spend the rest of your life here.
Remind me, are they 3-year terms?
2.
Are you sure I'm not also up?
Nope.
You are not up. Oh, I didn't bring the roster down here.
I saw our names.
Aaron, just
Like, I know I was.
Just
on.
curious, sorry.
first term was
Aaron, to
like 3
follow up,
months.
in terms
Like, oh, no, I guess
of
like
like
a year and a half.
reviewing questions,
Uh-huh.
there is opportunity after the standard interview questions have been asked to ask additional questions. So just because a question isn't in those pre-formulated ones, it doesn't mean that it can't be asked.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that. I think because you have to ask the same questions to each applicant, I like the opportunity to be able to add or maybe adjust some of the questions. Maybe it's changed
yeah,
over the
for
last
sure.
year as well.
Yeah.
Aaron, your term will expire 12/31 of 2026.
Great. Fab. Thank you.
That's all I have there. Yeah.
Stick with me.
All right. Well, we can go to staff updates.
So I've got a few items, and I'm just going to go through these quickly, and please feel free to ask me questions if you want more information. First is the Willamette Falls Public Improvement Funding from the state of Oregon. So going back in time and many years, we've been talking about the Willamette Falls site, the former Blue Heron site. That went through a number of iterations over years with different ownership, and then now the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde is the owner. So some things have changed around. There was a lengthy public process that was done with Metro, and Oregon City was very much a participant in kind of developing this idea for public access for a river walk. Those plans still exist. There was funding that came to Metro, was directed from the state of Oregon to Metro to the tune of $12.5 million through some of these different iterations. And that money has been setting with Metro for many years actually at this point. That money, I believe, came from some lottery funding that then was directed legislatively. Metro, with the change in ownership and just some of the dynamics of what's happened at the site, I think Metro had, held off on spending any of that money. And so somewhat recently, the state contacted both the city of Oregon City and Metro and said, we would like to see if we can redirect that money to Oregon City and let you all spend that and do something with that because we want to get something done with that money. And so there was a series of meetings, and then that got brought to our city commission. Metro approved the transfer out. Oregon City approved the transfer in to receive the money from the state. So we have that money now. It's $12.5 million. We have a timeline to spend that to do something related to creating public access, essentially, on that site. So I wanted to just inform you of that. There's definitely going to be some discussion around what takes place, what gets built, where the responsibility lies within the city organization. Is this a Parks and Rec amenity if it gets built? Is this Public Works? Is this a combination? Those decisions will be made, but certainly this is going to be some kind of public element, presumably with access and some type of pathway, presumably. So I'm sure there will be some part of this. It'll be parks and maybe more than some part. But anyway, that's a recent decision that was made. The city commission just in the last about month or so accepted that agreement from the state. So those monies have been transferred over, and the city now has that. And we are working quickly with the partners, with the tribe. So we have meetings with Grand Ronde happening that we're talking about how we may be able to even partner or something, all to be determined. But just for your awareness, that money is with the city now, and we do look to do some type of public improvement that goes along with the Grand Ronde's vision for that, which is now Tumwater Village is what they've renamed what formerly was the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. And they're beginning to roll out their development as well. So we're hoping to link those things together and do something for the public. Next is the Clackamette Park Design and Engineering Project. We have completed our process for doing RFPs for a consultant to come in and help us do the final design, do the engineering, put it into a ready-to-build state. And there will be a lot of process around that, but we went through the selection process. We just completed some finalist interviews with our consultants. We had a panel that recommended a preferred consultant. Now we will move into contract negotiation and hopefully be bringing a decision forward to the city commission in the near future. And once we've got a contract with a consultant, we'll be coming back with PRAC, and you'll be part of that discussion and the public process there. So we're looking forward to moving that forward and really getting some energy. You saw some of that on the CIP discussion tonight, that we've got phases that we're planning that's based on this process with the consultant. The other big planning project that we have coming on the horizon here is the Aquatic and Recreation Center and the end of the Oregon Trail site, conceptual design and planning. So these are essentially envisioning what we're going to do with a future aquatic and recreation facility to replace the existing pool, and what we do with the end of the Oregon Trail site. That process, we've put out an RFP for that. We have received our proposals that closed recently, and now we will move into a similar selection process for that. And what we want to ask of PRAC is for you to select a representative to sit on the selection committee to help us decide who we invite to be a partner to do that process with. We had some preliminary conversation with Tim and Ken. I know that Ken is interested if nobody else is, but you all can have that conversation. Tim, I don't know if you want to add any comments to that, but we're just looking for a representative from PRAC to help us with the selection.
Yeah, we do a preliminary call, and yeah, I had recommended Ken for this, even over myself, just given his lifetime of history dealing with Parks and Rec, knowing what to look for, to be part of the committee. It can be an open conversation. If anybody else would want to do that, to put their name in there, we can do a vote on this if you'd like to, but personally, I'd like to recommend Ken to be a part of that selective process. It's not selecting, I'm trying to want to be clear, it's just helping select the group that we would work with to overall kind of set this up, and I just think Ken has a lot of background in that. So my thought would be selecting Ken for that, and I know Ken was very excited to put his name in there, even though he couldn't be here tonight for his surgery and everything.
I think if Ken has expressed interest, he would be the one in our committee who would have the best skills for being on a representative.
I would just add that I spent many years at a Parks and Rec department as well, although in a different capacity, and was part of many consultant selections, helped redo the Conestoga Parks and Rec, Conestoga Aquatic Center out in Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec. Although I know Ken has many years in a much higher capacity than I ever served, but if we're putting names out there, it's something I'd also be interested in, especially having young children and planning to spend many years with children and the rest of our families that will be using those particular amenities as well.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding us on the background of that. I'd forgotten that part of your interview process.
If I can just add to make sure that it's clear, again, this is a very limited duration, like in the next few weeks here, selection panel that will help us pick the consultant. I just want to assure the committee there will be a lot of input opportunity from you as a group and also as individuals, a lot of outreach in the community. Once we start this process, there'll be heavy public engagement and lots of opportunity. We're going to ensure that PRAC is part of that process to help us develop that future of having a vision for a new facility. So this is just but one brief thing to select a consultant, just for making sure it's really clear.
Can we recommend a representative and an alternate in case that
Certainly.
representative can't make to a meeting?
Certainly.
Could you give me a bit more information about what the consultant's scope of work, like in the RFPs that you were reaching out for? What is that?
I'm sorry, what was
The
that?
consultant's scope of work, like if we're selecting a consultant, what are we asking them exactly to support on?
Yeah, so the work will be, this is a comprehensive study of, it's for efficiency purposes, we have two things going at the same time. And so we're asking, if possible, for one firm to lead the process for both the reviewing the future aquatic and recreation center and the end of the Oregon Trail master plan. They'll have some consultant work under them to probably get into the specialty areas. But as far as so So as far as the specific scope of work, and we have an RFP that we'd be happy to share with the committee if you want to read more of what we're asking. But essentially, what we're asking the consultant to do is do a very much an intense public process review on the aquatic and recreation facility side of it, where we might locate a new facility, what the kind of idea of what that might look like. We're not going to get into designing a facility, but we're visioning kind of a high level look at like, this is what we would hope to create. With the community's feedback, this is where we want to go with that. And when that vision gets created, there will also be a price tag put to that to say, this is probably the range of what we're looking at. So that we then have something to aim for with the community to say, this is our goal, this is what it's going to cost, how do we get there and fund this at some point in the future. Similarly, on the end of the Oregon Trail side, it's, we're dealing with an existing site that we're trying to determine, do we do something, does that look different than it does today? Do we expand the site? Do the buildings change? So a little bit of different work on each of those components. Hope that gives you a high level, but again, we have this RFP document, it's a public document, we'd be happy to share it. It kind of does get a little more specific what we're looking
That does help. I think I wanted to understand that it's the public how you're running public engagement. It sounds like it's partly that, and then also that visioning of what's the broader scope. That's good to know. Thank you.
And once a consultant is selected by this selection committee, then we actually get into negotiating a scope of work more specifically with the consultant and what that costs.
I just want to say, I think Ken and Aaron and Tim would all make really excellent representatives. And it's too bad there's not like 3 spots, because I think they all have really valuable input.
Yeah, this reminds me when we vote for chair and it ties up and it goes to the last person. I'm like, not that big of a but what we do have to pick somebody is my understanding this in the next few weeks, right? This is like an immediate choice.
In the very near future, yeah. So what we'll be reaching out to whomever you select, like really soon, probably beginning of next week. What this will entail, the work is, you'll be part of reviewing. There will be a scoring process for the reviewing the written documents, and then that will likely lead to some type of an interview process for maybe the top couple of consultants, and so probably a couple of different meetings, and then we'll select a consultant and move forward. So it's the extent of it. This will happen within the next probably 3 weeks.
So you'd like us to select the representatives tonight?
Please.
And I was gonna.
Okay, so, well, I would recommend that Ken be our representative with Aaron as our alternate.
I was gonna ask in the bylaws, is it a motion or is it a vote where, like, well, what's the correct way in the bylaws to do this? Because I got called on procedure once and I want to make sure
I would
the mayor
suggest,
doesn't come back from our other meeting.
yeah, I would suggest just a motion, and then you could make that decision that way.
Okay, sorry, Joyce, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Please finish your motion.
Recommend that PRAC have Ken as our representative on the conceptual planning and design project, and Aaron as the alternate if there are times when Ken is unable to attend, since he's not here to defend himself.
Is there a second? I will second that. Can we get a roll call, Corey?
Sure. Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
Aaron McClellan,
No.
Tim Lanehart,
Yes.
Emily Lisborg,
No?
and Melissa Dio.
No.
All right.
Did somebody else make a recommendation?
Recommendation does not pass. Is there another recommendation that we would like to make?
I would like to recommend Aaron as our primary representative and Ken as our backup.
I will second that motion.
All right. We have a second motion up. Corey, can we get a roll call?
Joyce Gifford,
Yes.
Aaron McClellan,
Yes.
Tim Lanehart,
Yes.
Melissa Dio,
Yes.
Emily Lisborg,
Yes?
You guys are great. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And again, we'll be in touch very soon, and there will be some information forthcoming, so stay tuned, and thank you.
I want to make sure to vote for everybody, so that was in there. All right.
One more, or a couple more quick additions that aren't on the written agenda. One is the parks system development charges. The methodology was approved since the last meeting, so I wanted to make sure you knew that that did get approved by the commission. There were some adjustments to that. For the sake of time, I won't get into the details of that this evening. It's very close to what you talked about. There was one change regarding multifamily housing that I can explain further if you want those details. But the commission did adopt that, so we do now have updated parks STCs for the first time in 25 years, so that was a big deal. Thank you, PRAC, for your support, and you made some recommendations into that process as well. And then lastly, and I'll ask Tom to give you an update on our upcoming Fall Fest and some other activity things that we have in the works.
So coming up next Saturday, which is crazy to say, is the inaugural OC Fall Fest. And we've got a nice little pamphlet there for you at your desk. If you flip over to the back, it also has some of our other fall events, which include, we're doing cemetery tours, also on October 4th at Mountain View Cemetery. Spaces are getting limited. I think we're about 3/4 full on that. So make sure if you are interested in that, get your tickets now. We've also got the Swamp Swim, which is a perennial favorite of the community on Saturday, October 25th, down at the swimming pool. And Saturday Night Spirits, one of our most popular events at the Ermitinger House, is taking place on November 1st this year. OC Fall Fest is turning out to be quite a fun event. We've got a petting zoo, we've got bands, so hope for good weather. The last one I saw was not looking good, so please no rain. But that's taking place kind of on what we call the quad, Ermitinger, Library, Pioneer. We're going to close down that intersection and have a vendor market. Community organizations are coming out. We've got some good sponsors. Bold Credit Union is sponsoring a pumpkin patch and photo opportunity. And we've also got Portland Cider with a beer garden. So we're very excited for this event. Please come join us.
Thomas, has this been shared with the private school, St. John the Apostle, that is right next to that?
I believe so. I would have to check with Cecily and Taylor, who are coordinating it, but we did talk about going around and doing some kind of door knocking, neighbor notifications as well.
If there's a digital version of this that could be shared with us tonight, I would be happy to get that into the principal's hands.
I can make
to be
that
shared
happen.
with the school group.
I think I received one.
And that's it on staff reports.
All right, well, it's not on the agenda, but I'm going to have time for member reports.
Thank you, Tim.
It's okay. I didn't mean to look at you right when I said it, sorry.
Yeah, you did.
Maybe it's like,
Nice doing
not on
that, huh? You got called out one time, so you gotta call her out. Goodness gracious.
So we'll open this up to member reports.
Well, I just want to say congratulations on the SDC updates in charge. Thank you for all your work on that. It sounds like you had to go a little back and forth, and a very exciting thing to do.
Thank you.
It's not necessarily a PRAC, but on the first Tuesday of October, which is the 7th, October 7th, the Hillendale Neighborhood Association will be hosting a developer that's interested in developing the Walmart property, which is a big green space right now. But if anybody's interested in what might be happening in Oregon City, please come. The meeting's at 7 o'clock at the Community Services Building, which is up by the police station. And that's the Hillendale and Tower Vista Neighborhood Association, but it's in Hillendale neighborhood. The Walmart property, for those who don't know, is that big green field that's between Wendy's restaurant and the Texaco station along Molal Avenue, just north of Beaver Creek Road.
Awesome. Very nice.
Thank you. It's been a while since we've met. I have a ton of reports. Want to give a shout out to the entire Parks Department for all these summer camps they put on. I think my son was in 3 of them, so he had fun with every one of them. Shout out to Melissa and her staff, of course. Big shout out for concerts in the park. That was a blast. Everyone that I went to was just jam-packed. I heard great
Absolutely
things from the
great.
community. I thought the kids area was a lot better this year. So just that continues to get better each year. The bands were fun. Hit Machine or whoever the last band is, they're always amazing. So just a big shout out to all the summer programming that happened. I mean, I went to, I can't even say all the different
Totally
parks things
agree.
that I went to, but just as the chair of this, everything was great. Anytime a splash pad was down, it was a quick fix. And I know there's a lot of splash pad issues that are there. It was a hot summer. It's a hot month right now. But just
Still
a big
going
shout out
strong.
to all the crew, the pool, Pioneer Center, just across the board, that it was just an excellent summer to be in Oregon City. And thank you for continuing to improve that.
Thank you.
That was great, Tim. Thank you.
I feel bad. We haven't met in a while. And I'm like,
No,
what have
I
I done in
didn't
parks
even
lately?
think
And I'm
about
like,
that.
I have 6 months of
Absolutely.
stuff that I did. I'm sure the pool was sick of seeing me, actually. I was there way too often. Any other member reports? All right, our next scheduled meeting is October 23rd at this time, and we are adjourned.